I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we're going to talk to you in the next few minutes about meditation. Meditation is something that the traditional church has become much more interested in the recent times, and the marriage of Eastern and Western religious philosophy has brought about a new understanding and a deeper understanding, we believe, of meditation. In New Thought metaphysical Christianity, meditation is fundamentally an important part of our worship and our spiritual life. We use prayer extensively, but meditation as a different form of communication with the spiritual realm has become almost a mainstay of New Thought organizations. And at the same time, traditional churches have expanded their understanding and embracing of meditation. Perhaps you've come from a tradition where you think of meditation and prayer as being the same thing. But in truth, there is some difference, and we'd like to share those differences with you and also talk to you about how meditation can affect your physical life, your mental life, and enrich your spiritual life. So I guess why don't we begin by talking about the difference, as we always do for those who don't know and haven't heard, the difference as we perceive it between prayer and meditation.
Well, of course, quite simply, we always say meditation is listening to God, and prayer is talking to God. So we pray rather briefly, and we listen more at greater length. And we listen in various ways. We can listen and use our meditation as according to the way we plan it. And it's not just always the same thing. It can be very creative. Mm-hmm. We can ask questions and get answers. We can just sit in the stillness, the silence, and listen. Or we can have one major question in our mind and then just see what God infills us with in relation to that. But there's no better way to attune ourselves to the divine than through meditation.
Mm-hmm. We in the West have really just come to an understanding of meditation, I think, in the last century, or especially in the last 50 years.
Yes.
In the traditional church, a lot of groups are involved in meditation, but those groups tend to use meditation techniques that were established by Western theologians or religious leaders. And I think it's interesting that today we see a real renaissance of Eastern meditation, and it certainly happens in metaphysical groups and in New Thought groups, but it's also becoming a part of the faith tradition of some of the mainline churches. It's interesting, too, that in the West we're so much more accustomed to praying.
Yes.
And that is talking to God, or more importantly, asking God for something. And meditation is a whole new realm. And I think for people who are new to the process, it can be just a thrilling event, but it does take a little discipline to begin with, doesn't it?
Yes, it does take discipline. You mentioned the last 50 years. That's exactly how long I've been meditating, 52 years. And it's been such a vital part of my life that I can't imagine having lived these 52 years without having used meditation to lift my spirits, to connect me with the divine, and to help me lose myself from the problems of life, because it does all that and ever so much more. And the mainline churches seem to have dropped meditation, and they surely must have meditated, because 2,000 years ago people meditated. And the Eastern religions were the prevalent religions, and people have always meditated in the Eastern in the Eastern concept of spirituality. But more and more, as you said, people are getting to realize the value of meditation and are using it.
Mm-hmm. And one of those values has to do with stress reduction, doesn't
it? Exactly. Because I did stress reduction work for a time, and it was purely just helping people learn to meditate, to be quiet and ask questions, or just be quiet and just receive an inflow of energy and power. And again, they can use it any way they like, but in stress reduction, that's what it would do.
Mm-hmm. So many of us are afraid of the quiet, aren't we?
Yes.
I mean, our lives are so busy, and so few of us take time to be quiet and one with God, if you will. And so in order to do that, I know you've meditated for a long time, as have I, and have many other people. So for many of us, it's very easy to meditate in almost any environment.
Yes.
But the best environment, at least for a quiet meditation, is in a quiet place away, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we can, I know I've heard you say that you take a moment of silence, of meditation, before you conduct a business meeting. And while the doctors or others are gathering around, then you just go into a moment of silence. And we can all do that wherever we are, whatever our profession, whatever we do. And we can do that and gain ever so much from it. But then we can have the time of total silence where we set this time aside. And I know you do that too. And I think most people who are balanced and who really are happy with their lives and accept life, the problems, the exigencies of life as being normal and natural. And yes, this has happened to me, but I'll get over it and I'll get on with my life. Well, I think those people all have a way of tuning in to divine God, and they have it's some form of meditation. Don't you think so?
Oh, absolutely. And there are various forms. And of course, the meditation that I use really in my daily life, I won't say more importantly than the quiet time, because quiet meditation is a very infilling time for me and a very strengthening time. But dealing with meditation on a daily basis or multiple times during the day as a centering force for me is tremendously important. And that takes a little discipline, and I would not suggest it for people who have not meditated rather extensively, because to bring a peaceful state or a peaceful consciousness or awareness into a conscious world or a conscious environment isn't for some the easiest technique. And as you mentioned, I've often used it in business, and also I use it in the midst of strife.
Yeah.
And often I'm able, when someone is angry or in a group of people who are having a heated debate or unhappy about a variety of things, I'm able to focus on one thing. Usually I focus on something that has to do with their apparel or their physical appearance, or someone's, not necessarily the person who has, who's causing the strife, and then simply center myself and call that the presence of God and harmony and balance and centering into the midst of that circumstance. It's a little bit, I think, from the practical standpoint, in this daily living meditation, like what you would think about in Lamaze, because of course in Lamaze you have someone who's in pain or suffering. There's conflict and strife, and so one of the things that a Lamaze student is invited to do is to focus on something, a picture, a brooch like the one you're wearing, your hair, excuse me, your earring, and then from that centering point to go into a time of meditation, which then moves into the deep breathing. Let's talk about that, which is very important.
That's the most important part of Lamaze, and I've been a Lamaze coach for a young friend of mine, and that's the most important aspect of the Lamaze, is the deep breathing. That's the most important aspect of meditation. As you know, I've been teaching meditation for more than 30 years, actively teaching it to groups and to individuals. And the first thing we always do is, and as we do at our church, when we meditate there, you and I lead the meditations, or others lead it, is the deep breathing. And if people will deep breathe throughout the day consciously, they will really be aligning themselves with creative and creator energy just automatically. It automatically works that way. And we need to know that we are responsible for every aspect of our being, and if we will just be silent on a planned basis, then it pays dividends so greatly that we will see that we can't live without that aspect of being.
Now, this deep breathing, one of the things we say often about breathing is take a cleansing breath. And isn't that a wonderful definition of what happens when we begin to breathe deeply?
Yes, and the cleansing breath is, I consider, to be inhaling deeply through our nostrils and holding it for a moment so that oxygen and prana permeates our bodies, and then exhaling slowly. And for some reason, the experts have found that if we exhale slowly with our lips slightly puckered, it makes a difference. And so we inhale deeply through our nostrils to a specific count when we're first learning to meditate, and later on we just automatically adjust to that count. But usually they say inhale to the count of 8, hold to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 8, with the lips slightly puckered, and then hold it to the count of 4 and inhale to the count of 8. But there's many different ways that people can experiment. They can try breathing more quickly than that and more more slowly than that. But the panting type of breath is what they teach in Lamaze, where they just pant it out. And so there's a certain book written by a wonderful Indian from the East, mystic, who talks about all the various types of breathing techniques and the type of meditation it brings. And the best way for people to find out is to just try breathing deeply to a certain count and then to a different count, more slowly and more quickly, and then just try panting for a moment and then breathing normally and pant and then breathe normally. And they'll find that their energies are so wonderfully changed that it's very helpful to do it that way.
And so why don't we just go through the methods of entering a meditation so that people who haven't ever experienced it before would begin to, in their mind's eye, have an idea of what we're talking about. So the beginning point, I guess, is to decide that you're going to meditate.
Yes, that would be it. And find a quiet spot if it's at all possible. And if you can't find a quiet spot, and some people can't, they have families or businesses next to them or who knows what, various problems of life, and they just have to ignore that the noise that's being heard. And a moment ago when you were speaking about your way of meditating, it was you were detaching, and so they just have to detach from that. Sometimes in your business meetings when things are getting a little chaotic, well, what you were really doing was detaching, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have to detach from those noises, and it irritates me sometimes when people complain if someone else sneezes or they hear a noise outside, because we need to be beyond that. We need to detach from any noises around us. So first of all, we sit, the best way to sit is with our spine straight, and that's the main thing. And it wouldn't matter where we put our hands. Some people just automatically put their hands with both hands up or both hands down. And from habit, I've put my right hand up because we receive with our right side, and my left hand down because we give out with the left. I started doing that many years ago, and it's just a normal thing that I do. I don't think about it. And it doesn't matter. That's what I would like to stress, that it doesn't matter. We should do what's comfortable to us. Having our feet flat on the floor is essential, but it's not absolutely essential. We can meditate lying down. Most people go to sleep if they're lying down when they try meditating. But then just to pray briefly and asking God for communion with the divine. And then what would you say would be next?
Well, then I think the breathing, we enter the silence and enter with the breathing process.
And just do the deep breathing, and then we can have, we'll just say one form of meditation, but there's all forms of meditation, and people can just need to try different methods. And there are many methods and many ways they can. But to just pray briefly, each in their own way, and then do the deep breathing. And then if they want to ask questions, then think of the questions they want to ask. And they probably have had those questions in their mind before. And people can get wonderful information through their questions. I know I've had life-changing answers in my meditations when I've been facing a knotty problem in my personal life or in other aspects of life. Those answers will come very clearly, and it's a wonderful thing, and it's helped so many people. And I think that's how Thomas Edison and a lot of the different Nikola Tesla, a lot of the wonderful scientists, they didn't call it meditation, but they attuned themselves.
It was a form of intuition,
right?
And so it was an intuitive process, and of course that's what we're talking about. And I think it's important to let people know that for the most part, and well, in almost every case, you're not going to hear a thunderous voice answering you, and it's not a frightening experience. Some people are afraid something is going to happen, and in fact nothing can happen but that what we allow to happen. And so as we open ourselves to the presence of God, which is what we're doing, and as we wait in that silence, and as we present questions, then we come to know with an inner knowing, which is that knowledge that connects our mind, which we talk about connecting our mind with the mind of God. So it's not as though God is going to say, well, Mike Costello, this is what you need to do. And we are so accustomed in the West to prayer operating in that way. And even as little children, we learn the evening prayers and the other kinds of recitations. And so we want to hear something. And what we're going to hear is with the inner ear and with the inner knowing. is very important.
And if we listen, we can hear sentences, and if we have to honor what we hear and not question it, because when we question anything we're hearing, then it blocks it, and we don't hear that anymore. So we just need to accept that what we're hearing is answers to our questions and go right on, and we can ask more questions. I know when I've gotten answers to problems of life that have been severe problems in my life, well, I'll ask a question, hear an answer, ask another question, hear an answer, and just keep right on asking questions. But I leave time for visualization, because very often I'll receive the answers in the form of a photograph, a series of slides, not a movie. I've not seen it like that. Now, some people do. So whatever happens, we need to honor that this is truly happening. We're getting answers that we have asked for. And however it comes, then honor that.
Mm-hmm. And we need to also be aware that as we ask questions and as we sit in the silence, we need to be vigilant that our mind doesn't begin to take over.
That's right.
And so often, especially in early stages of meditation, when people are talking to me about how difficult it is, and it is difficult for some people to gain the discipline to enter into a time of meditation. But once one enters into it, it becomes so much a part of life that it's impossible to imagine life without it. But so often people early in the process will allow their own mind, and so when we're supposed to be in silence and when we're supposed to be centered and when we're supposed to be empty, and as Hattie Garlish, who was the foundress of our church, said, we need to put our minds in neutral.
Yes.
But if we don't put our minds in neutral, then we'll begin to think about, well, what is it that I have to do later, and how is this bill going to get paid? And then it ends up being a quiet time of reflection about daily living, which is different than what we're talking about.
Yes.
So.
Well, I used to have that problem years ago, that my mind would just wander to something else. And perhaps later on I did. It's been a long time, though, since that happened. But I always had a pencil and paper handy right there, because this is how I was taught to meditate 52 years ago, that if your mind is definitely probably going to wander, so you just write down the things you think, like go to the store, pick up the groceries, pick up whatever your mind wanders to, then you make a note of it. Then you can drop it. And that's part of the detachment that you mentioned earlier. We have to detach from the problems of life, and the way we can detach from the things that are prompting us is to just write them down.
Mm-hmm. And that's important, that we are detaching from life so that we can reconnect with it. So the answers that we're being given are spiritual and mental,
Yes.
but they guide us and direct us in ways in which we should live.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And we never ask questions about another person unless they have asked us to ask for them. And we don't pry, and like we wouldn't read someone else's mail. Well, we wouldn't ask personal questions about another person. That's not what meditation is for. Meditation is for our own personal edification, knowledge, and teaching, training, and also just for tuning and getting information from Creator.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important. It is a personal time,
Yes.
and it is probably the most personal spiritual experience that many of us will have.
Yes. Well, of course, I believe that, and I believe you probably do too, that we have a guardian angel who's always with us, and she's right there to prompt us and help us as we meditate. And we have other teachers who help us that we can attune to, and we pray to God. And of course, because we're Christian, we pray, well, I pray in the name of the living Christ. But it wouldn't matter, whatever our spiritual beliefs, that empowers us. Whatever our belief is, it empowers us to pray in that way.
Absolutely, and we need to respect people's traditions.
Exactly.
And one of the fundamental teachings of our faith is an absolute tolerance and understanding of other people's faith.
Exactly. So we don't try to put words in other people's mouth. We don't pray to God to change anyone else. We only pray for specifics for another person if they've asked us to pray in that specific way. But we can pray for someone's highest good. But if we spend our time trying to manipulate life for another person, then we're not going to have a very good meditation.
And many people spend their time, their prayer life and their meditation time, in that kind of fruital effort.
Yes, unfortunately.
Fruitless effort.
Exactly. Totally futile. Because they're not going to get anywhere, because they're not going to get true spiritual understanding and connection with the divine, because they're out of bounds.
Let's talk a little bit about, people have all kinds of ideas about meditation. And one of the things that I've observed is, and we don't want to be critical of people, and that's not what we intend to do at all, but so many people get ideas about all kinds of religious experiences and then profess them to be gospel, if you will, or truth. And one of the things that people often try to do is to mystify meditation to such a high extent that it either becomes something that only the spiritually gifted can do, or only someone that is really godly can do, which is an odd statement because we're all godly. But there's that aspect, and then the other one has to do with the externals, and I think we need to be cautious of externals always. Because in religion, we're so accustomed to developing litanies. And in a litany, of course, someone tells us, or it is prescribed, what is to be said and what is to be done, and the rudiments and how it's to happen. And often people will tell that in a seminar or in a private session so that it makes it a little more exclusive than it really is. And I think we need to let people know that just because someone says that that meditation has to be a certain way doesn't make it so at all. And the other aspect is that when we meditate, I know people who will say, oh, you ought not to ever disturb a person in meditation because their soul is out of their body, or I don't know exactly what their interpretation is, but there's a lot that mystifies the experience, when in fact it is a very down-to-earth, very physical, spiritual connection. And it's very difficult to hurt someone unless they choose to be hurt. And so I think that's really important, because so many teachers and so many ministers who teach on meditation will make it much more complicated and much more mystical, and create a litany. And we see that in healing too. I've had many people come up to me and say, well, do you know when you do laying on of hands, you do it wrong? Well, I didn't know there was such a thing. So we have to protect ourselves from believing these kinds of lessons that people give us when in fact they're not true. Meditation is a simple act of communion with God, and anyone can participate in it, and it's very, very, very rare that anyone is going to be harmed by either being disturbed or having noise or any of these things that happen.
That's correct, and people want to seem to be exclusive. So if they put their own so-called spin on something, then they feel that they are more exclusive. The more truly spiritually oriented we are, the less exclusive we even think of being, because we don't think in those terms. We're just all inclusive. And we know that it's everyone's right to meditate. Everyone can if they wish. Everyone can meditate any time they wish. And they can meditate for a moment or for a longer time. Personally, I don't think it's too good to meditate for a really long time, like an hour or two or longer, because I think we gain more benefit from a more brief meditation. And I've seen people become too much, the way you were just saying, if they go into those really long meditations too often. So I think that's not the best idea.
Right. I think people who involve themselves in long meditations have to be spiritually guided.
Yes.
And they have to be a part of a group or a study group that is working in that process. And of course we have nuns and monks and people who meditate for extended periods, but we have to remember that that's their life vocation.
Yeah.
And so for most of us it's not a good idea, no, because what happens is our mind begins to act and react.
Yes. Exactly. And also we grow lazy because we just would rather sit there. It's a lot more pleasant to sit in meditation than it is to get up and make telephone calls that we need to make and do the things and clean the house or do our work wherever we're working. It's a lot more pleasant just to sit in meditation.
Yes, to sit at home instead of coming to church. So we think meditation is an adjunct. And like many things, meditation can become much more dominant than it should be. It's only one aspect of our relationship with Creator God.
And I would like to suggest to those people who already meditate, they might have gotten some pointers from us, or they might have gotten reassurance. But for those who have not meditated, just to try it. And if they just use the suggestions that we've given of sitting quietly and know that they are communing with the divine, and just to do it each in their own way, then they'll see the difference in their lives. And I don't think I could have faced the problems of life. And like many other people, I've had lots of unpleasant things happen in my life. In life, we all face the death of those people we love, regardless of what age we are, almost from infancy on. someone we love is going to be dying. And so that's hard. And then we face illnesses, and we face near illnesses, and we face disappointments in work and in relationships, and we face just the problems of keeping our environment up to par. So all those different things can be changed through meditation. And if we just try it, we'll see that it makes all the problems of life, whatever aspect that might be, more bearable, and we grow.
And it has the ability to relax us physically,
Yes.
which has the ability to lessen our physical ailments and physical illnesses.
Yes. And we're supposed to grow through our problems, and so we're able to grow through them, or through illness, or whatever it is. Then it stretches our consciousness. And meditation can stretch our immensity consciousness to such a very great extent.
Mm-hmm. And as we stretch our consciousness and our awareness, we become more empowered and strengthened to deal with the challenges of life.
Exactly, and it helps us to do that, and we are able to do that. And those people, I think, who go through life in a calm way, accepting problems, whatever they are in mind, body, or spirit, are those who do attune themselves to God's own energy regularly.
Mm-hmm. And that connection of mind, body, and spirit is probably one of this thing of meditation is probably one of the most magnificent vehicles that we have for that connection.
Exactly, because it quiets our mind and it stills our body so that our body functions more fully, better, and certainly it lifts our spirit. And of course, I think our spirit is always pure, so it helps our spirit to have control over our mind and body.
Absolutely. And so we believe that meditation is a wonderful technique, and we've been sharing with you these ideas and concepts of confident living. We hope they've been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Rights every wrong, dynamic power helps me be strong, confident living comforts my heart, from such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit moves from within.